As you know, I recently left my corporate job and I've been in total recovery mode, all about self-care. One of my new routines is the nighttime shower before bed. There's just something about washing away the day and that reflection that's been super helpful for me. I've been using one of our partners, Osea's Mega Moisture Duo. This combo body oil and body lotion are so freaking incredible. It literally feels like I'm at a spa. I realized that the secret is seaweed and other skin level ingredients that are normally reserved for face products. And that's why I was so excited when Osea became one of our partners. And, we're so grateful for partners like this because one, they keep the show going, but they're also super good for all of our listeners and for our own well-being. So if you want to have that nighttime bliss like I am doing, you can get 10% off your first order site-wide with code DATEABLE at oseamalibu.com. You'll get free samples with every order and free shipping on orders over $60. So head to oseamalibu.com and use the code DATEABLE for 10% off. Let us know which products you end up going with. Share them in social. Super excited to see what you end up choosing. I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine.
The Dateable podcast is an insider's look into modern dating that the Huffington Post calls one of the top 10 podcasts about love and sex. On each episode, we'll talk to real daters about everything from sex parties to sex droughts, date fails to diaper fetishes, and first moves to first loves. I'm your host, Yue Xu, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear from my co-host and producer, Julie Krafchick, as we explore this crazy dateable world. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. The topic for this episode is something I can very much relate to ever since I was in middle school. And I think I've experienced it every year ever since with people who may not even know. It's about this topic, and we were debating how to pronounce this. Is it unrequited love? Or is it unrequited love?
We've landed from Google Translate that's unrequited love, but it does sound weird, doesn't it?
But sometimes the computers, they don't pronounce it correctly. So Ann, our guest today, how would you pronounce it?
Unrequited. Yeah.
Unrequited love. I am glad that this mystery is solved because I've heard it in both ways, but unrequited just sounds better.
If anything, we've taught people how to pronounce it.
Yes.
So episode over.
Episode done. You're welcome, people. But let me just give a definition of what unrequited love is. It's one-sided love that is not openly reciprocated or understood as such by the beloved. The beloved may not be aware of the admirer's deep and strong romantic affection or may consciously reject it. Wow, that's just so sad. It's so depressing. Yeah. That is literally every diary entry from my middle school years. It really is.
Same.
I love that our guest was able to acknowledge that this was one-sided love when all these years I was just in denial, thinking that these men also had unrequited love for me. They were just too shy to admit it. So there we go. in the land of denial. But now it's a good time to introduce our guest. Her name is Ann. She is 28 years old, currently lives in LA, and originally from New York, currently in a monogamous relationship. And she made a film about unrequited love. It's called In Reality. She's an award-winning writer, director, and actor who recently came out with this film called In Reality that Julie had the honor of seeing here in San Francisco.
Amazing.
It's about being obsessed with falling in love and all the strife of being a single, hopeless romantic in New York City in your early 20s. The film has been screened at 13 film festivals domestically and internationally and has won 9 awards. Congrats. You can also watch it on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah. So actually, I just have to fact check. I think it's actually 20 film festivals.
Damn. All right.
10 awards.
It's like we can't even keep up with Google here.
You more than doubled in awards in the last time we got a bio from you. Obviously, you gave us a little teaser earlier about how your own experience with unrequited love was the inspiration for this film. Let's just get to it. Tell us kind of about your experience and what made you want to make a film about it.
So the origin of this film was I had been in this unrequited love relationship with a guy who I'd hooked up with at one point, and then he told me that he just wanted to be friends, but I had already fallen in love with him and was like naming our grandchildren and thinking about a long life together, and I couldn't accept that he didn't feel the same way about me based on the way that he was acting. Like, we seemed to have amazing chemistry and XYZ. I was 23, and so still very much a hopeless romantic, or just understanding myself to be a hopeless romantic. And I spent about a year hanging out with him and really becoming obsessed with him and obsessed with why he wasn't reciprocating the love that I had for him, even though he had told me that he didn't feel the same way about me. So after a year had gone by, it was Valentine's Day 2015, and I actually saw a video that kind of sparked the initial inspiration for me to make In Reality. So I was like, maybe I could just make a short film about this experience, because I definitely need to understand it. Like, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. It's been a year. I can't believe I wasted this long believing something that isn't true. I want to figure this out, and maybe I could just make a short film that would kind of help me figure it out.
So your therapy session was making a movie, basically.
Yeah.
That's quite productive.
4-year therapy.
Mine's just ice cream.
That is the most productive way of getting over someone ever.
Basically for 4 years straight, because I edited it as a short, and that became the proof of concept for the Kickstarter to fund the series, and then the series became the proof of concept for the feature. And then we had to shoot the feature and then edit the feature and then deliver it. So it was a long process. That's just what it had to be.
One of the things that was really cool about the movie was just like, it took you in like your mind of like how to deal with this situation. Like we talked about earlier, like unrequited love is quite common. Can you kind of like walk us through like just like more of your personal experience with this? Like, I guess, how did you guys meet? Like, did you date? Like, how did you get in your head that it was something when he just didn't?
We were set up, not like you should date this person, but just like you should meet this guy. Like, and so I went out for drinks with him, and it's one of those things where like you never know who you're going to hit it off with. We like really hit it off, and as you know from the first date scene, it was just like one of those times where we just got along so well, and I felt like I had just met a really special person that uniquely understood and responded to my sense of humor, and I responded to his as well. And I was 23 at the time, and just really still had this incredibly idealized vision of love. I still do, by the way. But I had this idea that like once you meet someone that makes you feel that way, like that must be the person that you're meant to be with, right? If you're feeling that, then they must feel it too. It has to be reciprocal. Like it wouldn't feel that way if it wasn't. And so then we hung out a couple more times, and I was, trying to keep my expectations tempered, but definitely was running away with them as well. And then he kissed me.
Oh.
at the end of one of the nights that we hung out, and I was like, yes, like this is it.
So you had a big crush. You thought it was reciprocated.
Yeah. And then we had sex, and I was like, yeah. Like, so that was basically when I really started to think that there was something here. But as it turns out, that is not always what guys think. Or, I mean, also it's just the times we live in about casual dating and casual hookups and stuff can be really confusing, and if there's not really an open stream of communication about like what it actually means to you, someone can get the wrong idea and be led astray, and in that case that was me. And so yeah, and then a couple weeks after that, he told me that he just wanted to be friends, and I had gone so far down the rabbit hole of believing that he also loved me and that we were starting a relationship that it really shocked me and sent me into a great depression. And that's when I started to obsess about it. Like, why doesn't he like me? But like, what did I do wrong? And I started going back in my head about like, well, I said this thing, and maybe if I hadn't said that thing, I could have, blah, blah, blah. And then, but we kept hanging out because he, in the end, like, I don't think that he is a bad person. I think we just like miscommunicated, and he really hurt me. And so there was like that unfortunate human moment that happened. But I think his intention was like, oh, I wish that like we could still be friends because we do get along so well. But that was even more hurtful because it kept him in my life, and it kept me believing that like because he wanted to hang out with me, he must also be in love with me, like, or maybe he's denying something in himself or whatever it was that I was concocting. Because that friendship went on for about a year. It allowed me to continue to rev and continue to obsess and build this like obsession with him and with what was not real.
Were you guys still hooking up during this period, or when he said it was friends, did it turn to strictly platonic?
Yeah, it turned strictly platonic, which is something that when I tell the story, some people are like, wait, what? But yeah, I still thought that there could be something there.
I feel like the difference between unrequited love and a crush is that a crush is very blatantly one-sided because it's just like kind of from afar. But unrequited love is that in your mind, you're progressing the relationship forward. And in their mind, there probably is some sort of friendship that's progressing. It's just not in a romantic sense. But you look for these signs.
Oh my God,
Every little sign, even just like a little look. Or he gave me a piece of candy today. That must mean he loves me back.
He gave me a nickname. His
a
middle
nickname.
name is kind of like my last name. Like, I don't know.
You like really go stretch deep for it, right?
You look for all these signs.
Reading my horoscope every day.
And you are hoping that they give you these glimmers of hope. And I would also say the people who are the beloved ones on the other side, they're not completely innocent either. They they're aware this is happening. They do like the attention, but they're kind of like, I told you my intentions, so I'm in the clear.
Well, I definitely had a situation. I love that we were saying like middle school, but I know mine spanned way later than that.
Julie's was yesterday.
Okay, I've learned from my mistakes a little, but I would say like mid-20s, I definitely had a situation again that lasted way too long. I feel like these situations do linger like way past their expiration date. And I remember like the guy was a friend. And it kind of started off, like, I think you also, like, grasp onto the way it started, too. Like, I heard even from your story, and it's like...
If there was some kind of magic there.
Magic,
exactly. So it's like you're grasping onto something that might not be the reality current day. And I remember, like, he flat out was like, I don't want a girlfriend. And somehow in my mind, I was like... He just hasn't fallen for me yet.
Yeah,
like,
he just doesn't know it yet.
Exactly.
Know how good that would be for him.
Exactly. You like justify it. Like why? I guess my question is like, why do we think that we do this?
Yeah, and why did you keep going with this, knowing that you were getting deeper and deeper into this?
Yeah. So what it came out to, and not to like spoil alert the movie or anything, it was that now that I'm like way removed from that experience, and definitely in the process of making the movie I uncovered this, but like I was not having a good relationship with myself, and I wasn't giving myself enough credit to be like, well, if you don't like me and you're like sticking around, like goodbye, like I don't need I don't need your love, actually. And at the time, like, I really did. And I needed the attention, and I needed the love from someone else. And I wanted to find someone to be in love with, because, like, to me, that is still the best thing in the world.
Yep.
Not just romance, but like actual reciprocal love, I think, is the holiest thing that you can do on this earth. So I was always like in pursuit of that. And every time I thought that I had found it, I would attach myself so deeply to it. But kind of bringing it back to the question, like, it does take a sense of real self-love to be able to differentiate between if the person that you're lusting after is actually worthy of your love, and if they're not giving you the same love back or the same attention back, then they're not worth your time, and it's not that there's something wrong with you. And that was the thing that I was really fixated on, was like, there is something wrong with me, and if I could just fix that thing, then he will love me.
Right, I can win him over.
But it's more of beating myself up and trying to change to accommodate someone else, when really there was nothing wrong with me. Or maybe I did have to grow, and I had things to mature, but it was on my terms and things that I could have been more loving to myself. But I was very in a not so great self-esteem place. And that's what I found by the end of the movie.
Was he still in your life during the production of the movie?
No. The first thing that I did when I had the idea to start even just the short project about it was I told him about it and said that this was something that I wanted to do, and is he okay with that? And he said yes, and he gave me his blessing. But then as it kept growing, I wanted, again, to make sure that he was okay with it. And so I asked him again, and he said, you don't need to keep asking me about this. Like, you can just go on and do your thing. And so then from there, I kind of let him go. And we haven't spoken or communicated or anything. And that's like mainly because I just don't want to disturb him. And I don't, like, that was his request, was like, don't bother me anymore. He's out there somewhere, and I wish him all the best.
Like, what was the breaking point that you're like, this can't keep going on? Because, like, I think it's interesting that you said, like, he's not in your life, and it's typically, like, what is it that, like, causes this to just be like, this is not worth it anymore?
Valentine's Day was just like cliche and everything, but it was definitely a reminder of that, like, wow, I am, ever since middle school, have been in this situation. Why? Why do I keep doing this? It's my situation that I'm in. It's not this guy. I know that. So I'm the only person that can get myself out of it. So I better do that. And the only way that I know how to do that is to make a movie about it. I knew that would be the end of our relationship. And I would, in that process, have to let him go and have to fall out of love with him. But yeah, and then that's just back to, that means that I love myself more than him, which should be the case.
Yeah.
My health and my happiness is more important than keeping this person in my life who is, by being there, hurting me, or I'm hurting myself by being around him.
So was there anything that he did or anything that happened that made you have that realization, or was it just shit, it's Valentine's Day, what am I doing with my life?
It was Valentine's Day. It had been a year. I had kind of met him around that time, so I was just like, the freaking year of my life. Even though I had told him that I still liked him. I had a conversation with him kind of, I don't know, whatever, 3/4 of the way through the year, that I still had feelings for him, and that did that bother him that we were still hanging out and being so, buddy. And we had this weird conversation about that, and kind of just ended with no, I mean, whatever, it's fine. And then even after that, he kept texting me videos of his travels, or just kept engaging in a way that I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that if you don't like me? Buzz off if you're tormenting me now. So I don't think that he meant to do that, and I'm always on the side of I'm never gonna assume that someone's out to get me, because I just don't think that for me is a valuable headspace to be in. I think it was he was oblivious, and or he knew that I was an active audience for him, and that he could get that attention whether he thought about it in a malicious way or not. It was just oh, Anne will respond to this.
Yeah.
It's self-serving. And maybe it's not malicious or ill intentions, but it's still self-serving.
Yep.
You were providing some sort of benefit for him. Yeah. But so now you're with someone new. You're in a monogamous relationship, not with this guy, right? Do you still sometimes feel a little bit of love for him, or do you reminisce about him?
Never.
Never. You're completely over it. Although you made a whole movie about him.
Yeah, but yeah, I got over him so quickly, like soon as the production of the movie started, because I became obsessed with the movie and obsessed with just making it amazing and like making it the best thing that I could make that would translate this experience and connect with other people and like basically be the movie that I wish that I could have seen before I went down my rabbit hole of obsession with him. Yeah, it just like took my mind off him, and I think that that's another thing that I realized. And I almost went in this direction with the movie, but we decided to keep it to more of a narrative. But I wanted to go into like the science behind obsession and how your brain, when you just keep thinking about the same thing, it gorges these pathways that keep you in this cycle. And when I made the decision to make the movie and had so many other things to think about, from like the production, fundraising, the characters, the act, like writing, everything, I was distracted enough to be like, wow, actually, I don't feel anything for this person anymore. It became about me.
I would also, and let me know if you feel the same way, but like when I was in this situation, it took me just meeting someone after that I ended up falling in love with that was reciprocal, not a one-sided way. And then you basically see the stark difference of like what your relationship was. And then you really realize like this was not real love.
Yeah.
Someone now who's like a perfect angel, like love of my life, man of my dreams. I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing? Like, I wish that I had known that this is what it would, I mean, I guess I did know that this is what it would be like, because that's why I wanted it so badly. But like, I dated a bunch of other people between the guy that In Reality is about and meeting my boyfriend, Jordan, who did the same thing as In Reality guy. Like, we dated for a bit. I was super cautious because I didn't want to break like my heart again, and blah blah blah, evidence that they liked me, and then they just wanted to be friends again, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, even so, like looking back on those relationships and realizing that like I was definitely making not excuses, but like I was building up those relationships when there really wasn't that much grounded, like.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like, all these memories are coming back of middle school. No, just kidding. Actually, this happened to me in my 20s. I was living in New York, and I think I had this unrequited love while I was in a relationship. So I was in this like dead-end relationship for 5 years, living with this person, and I met someone on at work, and he quickly became this obsession of mine. And I think throughout our affair together, or whatever it was, he kept saying, I don't want to be in a relationship with you. He actually had a girlfriend at the time too. But to me, I kept playing these like scenes of us slow-mo on the subway, walking hand in hand in Union Square at midnight because we were hiding from our significant others. But in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so romantic. But I think what made me really get over him was I wanted to retell this love affair to a friend of mine. So I was telling her the story, and she kept asking questions like, wait, what did he say to you? He said he didn't want to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And then I would defend him. And she's like, what are you, his publicist? And I was like, holy shit, no kidding. I kept defending him because I was in such denial, but I was his PR person. Like he had done something bad and I was trying to cover it up. And she's like, you should just retell that story, but unedited. And I was like, damn.
I think that's a really good point. And in the movie, it seemed like your friends were getting quite annoyed by the constant talk. And I feel like I definitely had that situation too. I remember like one of my friends, because I was like just convinced that like we were going to end up together. Like when we would literally just like get drunk and hook up, like there was no dates happening at all. And I remember like one of my friends was like, you should go on a real date first. And I was like, damn, that's a slap in the face, but it's the truth, right?
Like, when you're in it, you're so sensitive to the truth.
Yes.
And that's why it hurts. Like your friends are just trying to help you, and the friendship piece of the puzzle is like a really important part of the story, because I needed to show like how being obsessed with someone that doesn't love you affects the relationships in your life of people that do love you and want you to be happy and are trying to help you, but you're not letting them because you're in denial, and you're kind of just hurting those relationships by not being present in them.
Here's a question for both of you. Do you think unrequited love is love? Or is it lust? Or is it strong like? Or is it obsession?
I have an opinion, but I'm going to let Anne go first.
Oh man, I think it's obsession. The way that I love Jordan is so much richer and so much realer because it's real. And unrequited love is like, it's like a drug and it's an addiction and it's more of a mental state of mind. And I mean, yes, there's a lot of science to like whatever say that love with a significant other and reciprocal love is also an addiction. And my definition of love and like the love that I talk about in the movie that I idealize and like at the beginning I wanted so badly is essential human experience love, like the love that you have for your family, the love that you have for your friends, the love that like you'll do anything for that person and they'll do anything for you, not from like a romantic crazy you're losing your mind standpoint, but from human standpoint. And like your relationships are literally all you have on earth. Like everything else can go away, but like if you don't have strong relationships, you will not be happy. And those are all like should all be built around love in like the most pure essential oil, like deep down way. And so unrequited love, I don't buy it anymore. Like fuck it, it's not love. Because if it was love, it wouldn't make you feel that way. No.
I also agree it's not love. I think like for me, it was at a point in my life that I don't think I was ready for an actual relationship. So it was all, the way I view it is like when I actually fell in love, it was I want the best for this person. Like it's less about me and it's more like I wish you the best. Where when I was in the unrequited love situation, it was almost like a challenge. Like I needed to win something from him. I needed to get his affection. It honestly wasn't even really about him in the end of the day. Like it was about me proving to myself that I could do something. So it's like
validation.
It's validation.
It was like, oh, you like me now? Like, look at all the things. Like, validate me. Like, why don't you like me? I'm like, come on, give me the attention, give me the validation. But then when someone actually loves you and like sees you for who you are and makes you feel like you are totally valid, that's love. Because you don't have to fight for it. It's just like happening. You're like, holy shit, this feels amazing.
And then you also have like your friends too, right? That you're like, have been like, why are you wasting all this time with this person? So then you feel like you need to prove it to them that it's something more. Right. Like it becomes this like,
you're not delusional. Right. This is real.
So what do you think? Do you think it's love?
So I believe love is a choice. By that definition, I think love is independent of the other person's actions. I can choose to love someone who may not love me back. So also by that definition, when I love someone, they owe me absolutely nothing. So I do think unrequited love is a form of love where you just purely love someone without expecting anything back. But what makes it unrequited is that you actually do expect something back and you want some sort of result. And that's what ends in all the messiness.
And you're not getting that. You're not getting your expectations met in any way.
You're not getting nothing.
So I guess like we talked a little bit about obsession. And I think like if you were to like ask like telltale signs of like when there's a situation of unrequited love, I would say like when you have to like repeatedly talk to your friends about every last thing and overanalyze.
That is a telltale sign. I was that. Again, not to be like grass is greener or whatever, but I don't need to talk about my relationship with, I mean, I'm talking about it to you guys right now, but like, I don't need to call up my friends and be like, Jordan told me that he loved me today. And like, cause I just don't need their validation either. Like I don't need to convince anyone because it's like personally happening between the two of us. Yeah, I think that's definitely a telltale sign. If there is doubt, if you can allow yourself to recognize that you are doubting whether or not you two are coming into it equally, I think that's a telltale sign. If you're making excuses for him, if you're, giving him like too much of the benefit of the doubt, if there's not even like a open level of communication about like, what do you want? And if you're not able to hear that person say what they want and then believe them that like they know what they want, maybe they don't know, but if you were what they wanted, they would be acting differently.
So my friend is currently going through a unrequited love situation, and I can totally tell the difference between when she talks about this versus like someone who's truly in love with someone. She would say, he doesn't even know how good I am for him. He has no idea how much better his life would be with me. He has no idea what he's missing out on. But then she's never talked about why she loves him, like the qualities that she loves about him, and how he makes her feel. She never talks about that either. So if it becomes petty like that, where you're like, he's missing out or she's missing out, then you're definitely in a sticky situation. So if someone is in a sticky situation like this, how do they get out of it? Let's take a quick breather so I can tell you about Lola, a fabulous female-founded company offering a line of organic cotton, BPA-free tampons, pads, and liners. And great news for everyone, they also offer sex products too, like condoms, lubricants, wipes, you name it. What makes Lola so fabulous in my eyes is that their products are formulated to deliver the sensation and reliability you deserve without unnecessary irritating additives. You've heard me talk about this a million times before. Lola's condoms feel amazing, but they're also made out of natural rubber latex and individually tested for contraception and STI protection. And you all know I'm a big fan of the personal lubricant as well because it features a mess-free one-click pump system with a water-based formula made with aloe vera and is completely hypoallergenic. With Lola, you are in charge of the subscription you want and you get everything delivered to your door hassle-free. Good news for you all, you get 40% off your first month's subscription. Just visit mylola.com and enter the code DATEABLE when you subscribe. Again, that's mylola.com and enter the code DATEABLE and get 40% off your first month's subscription. Now, back to this episode. So if someone is in a sticky situation like this, how do they get out of it? One, you got to recognize it first.
Like, my friends did their best to help me, like, figure it out. And, like, the only thing that actually worked was me coming to my own realization, and kind of across the board, not just with an unrequited love, but with like any of your friends that are in something where they're going down the wrong path and like you're trying to guide them. But like, I've just come to the position of like, people will learn their lessons the way that they need to learn them. Like, you can't, even if with your best intentions, like you can give them honest feedback, but at some point you just have to like be like, you need to figure it out.
100%
and that's what that's why that line is in there at the end of the movie with my friend. Was like, figure your shit out. Like,
I'm done.
I can only do so much.
Exactly.
And also, like, when you start to see your other relationships failing and people avoiding you or like just not acting the same way that they were when your friendship was in full bloom and like was in a good place, that should be a signal.
Or sick of hearing about them.
Yes.
And not like blaming the other person, like, they're acting so weird, they won't listen to my like ravings anymore, you know, like thinking about it like, maybe I'm doing something that's repulsing them and like making it really hard for them to be around me.
I don't know, it's interesting because I think sometimes maybe it's like personality type 2 that tends to fall into these situations. Like, I think for me, like, I am like someone that likes to like fantasize and dream just like about all things in life, not just love. So like when you do get that like glimpse of something, you're like, this could be so much. And it's like becomes this fantasy. And like, I think to what Ann just said, you have to go through it yourself. And I think I'm so glad I had this situation, even though it lasted probably like a year and a half longer than it should have. But that's the reality of what happened. And it was like, I needed to learn it on that time, but it's like, now I know what I'll never stand for again. So it's like, as soon as you see a sign and you're like, wait, this isn't like actually reciprocated.
This is not what I wanted. It's not the fantasy that I envisioned. And that's why the movie is called In Reality. Because that was my character's situation, was like just idealizing everything, like believing in the whole shebang of romance and fantasy and like Disney magic and all of that. going on the journey to understanding what reality really is and being able to confront it and not run away from it into my fantasies and into my imagination, which is a much, I think, healthier place to be in. But like to be able to balance both of them, because like I'm never going to stop dreaming. I'm never going to stop being an imaginative person. That is one of the again, another like beautiful part of life is to be able to imagine things that aren't real and to like push yourself to strive for things that you don't have yet in your life, but to be able to balance that and also recognize when you are off course and when you are imagining something that is not true and real.
Yeah, I think you've said it before, Yue, that you've had this they call like the reality check.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, like let me write down what is actually happening. So then when I'm like starting to like spin stories off, I can like reference that and be like, wait, he actually did this? Like that is not what I'm now telling myself and putting him on a pedestal, essentially.
I used to keep a fantasy folder where I would write these fantasy stories about the guys that I was like had a crush on or really liked. I would only visit this folder when I felt like I needed to be in that space.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure, you did.
Like, oh, not feeling so good about myself today. I'm just going to read my fantasy folder of stories. But then the reality check is really important. But my question, though, is there's kind of skewing one way or the other. And you kind of touch upon this too, Anne. Is like, I think the three of us are very fantastical in our thinking. And maybe we are dreamers. We're creatives. Yeah. And then there are some people who are a little too real. You know, who are like, nah, love doesn't happen. Marriage doesn't happen. It's like this, I'm not sold on this romance thing. And you were talking about striking that balance. What are some ways that people can strike that balance? Because I think there is something great about being a hopeless romantic. People say romance is dead. How can we bring some of that back?
Oh, well.
Watch the film first.
Watch the film. And so I did kind of lose my romance a bit in the process making the movie because, I mean, number one, I wanted to break it down and I wanted to access a little bit more of a grounded perspective, but kept dating guys that like it wasn't working, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not, I know that I'm not like done forever, but I'm just not going to think about this right now because I don't know if this is real anymore. Like I don't know if I'll ever find the person that I've been idealizing. Like I don't know if that person actually exists, and I'm just not going to use my brain to think about that anymore. But then once I met Jordan and the way that our relationship developed, it like is a fantasy, but it was actually happening. And like while it was happening, I was like, holy shit, like this cannot be real. But it was. And he kept proving to me that he really was as good as I was imagining him to be. And it was actually really scary because I was like, I don't want to fall for this anymore. Like he was writing me poetry and he was speaking to me in a way that made me understand that he really understood who I was, and he was seeing through a lot of my maybe like masks that I put on, performance things that like we all do to like, you know, deflect vulnerability and intimacy. And once it got to the point where I was like, wow, he like really could be that person. And I think he is. I was able to just let down the wall and speak so direct. Like we both were speaking so directly to each other. It was like, it was very easy to say, I love you, and say all the things that we both were feeling to each other because they were real. And then I'm still in a bit of disbelief about it because it happened so strangely in conjunction with like the release of the movie. It goes back to like when you know, like when you feel that and you are on the same frequency as someone and they are meeting every mark that you like have always wished of a person that you could be with, feel really good about yourself, then you just know. I don't know. I think like for people that like aren't romantic and are too real and are too, you know, cynical about it, that's their journey to come back to like if we're too much on the fantasy side or like our journey is to find a little bit more of balance with the reality, like they need to come back to the fantasy because they should be able to fantasize about the person that would be best for them so that they can know it when they find it. Because like I also think that you could also meet someone that could be really good for you when you're not ready to be in a relationship, or when you don't believe you're closed off to it and you're not open to that person, and they'll feel it. So like they'll just kind of like buzz off. But like when you are open to it, you need to be able to like know it when you see it. I guess is my point. You can only know that if you fantasize about like what would be the ideal person for me to be with, and like what are the attributes that like I know I need in a partner to make me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mix of fantasy and reality, but it's also making sure that your fantasy is backed up by reality and it's not just totally in your head and in your own world. Since we've all like agreed that kind of unrequited love is different than potentially this two-sided love, why do we think unrequited love is so painful?
I think it just goes back to self-esteem, I think, and that's like super simplistic, and I know it can be a lot more complicated, but I just don't think that someone would be able to love someone who didn't love them back if they didn't have like a certain level of self-respect, that like they knew that they deserve better. By fixating on the rejection part of it, you're just cutting at like the deepest level of insecurity that you have, which is that like I'm not good enough. Like I am unlovable. There's something wrong with me.
Yes.
Why doesn't this person love me back? And then you go down the rabbit hole from there.
So again, it's back to yourself. It's not just like I broke up with someone. It's like there's something flawed with me.
It's painful because it's painful to your ego.
Yes.
For some reason, you can't win this person over. You're lacking something.
Yeah.
When that's really not the case.
It's not the case. Like, in reality, you're not right for that person. They know it. They just figure it out before you know it. Yeah. And like, if they're not feeling it, it's because like they have a different idea of what they want, and like you're not it, but that's okay because you're still a good person. But when you get rejected, you think that it's because you're lacking something. It's just like people are so different. People are so varied. People have so many different needs. Like you can't imagine what another person needs unless you know them like super well. But that's not usually the case.
I'm just curious about all of your unrequited love situations. I see a pattern with me and my friends that we've talked about this with. You have this unrequited love with someone when you have something very unique that you connect on. Like I feel like my situation, we really connected about like this one hobby of ours. And this is all we ever talked about. And I just kept thinking, wow, nobody else sees it this way. Nobody else can connect with me this way. I will never find someone else to connect me with this way. My friend who's in this situation right now, they have this mutual obsession with language, and they love breaking down language and linguistics and how characters come about. And she feels like, oh my gosh, we're obviously meant to be, because who has such an obscure interest? But I think that's what's really misleading for unrequited love, is that there are other people out there who can connect with you on multiple levels versus just this one thing.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like that wasn't necessarily my situation, but I think there was this feeling of like, oh, this person gets me like no one else, which really wasn't the case at all, because like if they really got me like no one else, like we would have actually been together. Right. But you know, like for whatever reason in my head, I like thought that. So it is a scarcity feeling though.
It's about feeling seen and like validated, that like, wow, this other person validates the fact that I like this thing, or I have this interest, or I see the world this particular way, and I'm not alone in that. And I think that's a part, like another part of love is like, it's lonely in the world. And when you do make a connection with a human, whether it's in romantic terms or just a friendship or over a shared experience, it gives you that feeling of like, I'm alive.
I think
I'm valid.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like some of it's like your time, like timing when this happens to you, because like I have had definitely like one definitely lasted longer than the other, but like it was the first one especially was like the first time that I felt like I was like actually like adult dating. So it was like you kind of latched onto that. And again, it was like early 20s. Like I didn't really have those experiences as much. So it was like, this is something like special and like scarce. And I think like as you get older and you've learned those hard lessons and like all of that, like you start to see like things for what they are more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good segue to takeaways.
Takeaways. I guess I'll start. I think about this idea of unrequited love quite a bit because the people that I've had the situation with still hold a very special place in my heart. Not that I would want to be with them again, but they taught me so much about what love should feel like and not what I think love really is. So I'm so glad I went through that because now I can course correct. But I do want to touch upon our other takeaway, which is when you course correct too much and then you're just too much in the reality and there's just no love and everyone's cold. How do we get some of that romance back? And I think that what we need to do more of is that we need to put more of ourselves out there. We need to just give more. Julie and I were having this conversation with a guy friend who's like, I will never have this connection with another woman again. We're like, how do you know if you don't just put it out there? Like, go write a love song. Go do something super romantic. Right. Don't be afraid to have these bigger romantic gestures because you never know what can come back.
Yeah. And the romantic is like, yes. I think like my biggest one, it's this in reality, which is the movie title, but it's like, I think it's like really separating and coming to terms like of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, is it because of your own self? Is it really love? Has it been proven? Like, I think just like being a little more logical, like, especially if you are the type of person that likes to fantasize. So maybe it's knowing you. And that kind of goes to your point. If you're more logical, then maybe you could use a little more fantasy and vice versa. Yeah. And I think the other piece too is like, you can't change people. So like if someone's like, I don't want a relationship, whether it's with you or just at that time of their life, like I think we just try to justify so much.
Yeah.
So it's like
listen to them.
Yes. And the reality, again, at that stage, whatever the reason is, they don't want to be in a relationship with you. So you need to remember that, not cling to this hope and like feeling that like you can change them. Because I think that's like what we were talking about earlier of like, it becomes like an ego thing and it's like something you need to win, not necessarily like a pure, I'll do anything for you love.
Right.
A lot of things to say. I'm just going to go from like responding to everything that you guys just said. I guess the first thing is all of the people that I have been in unrequited love with have been extremely important to my development as a human. And like, had I not gone through those experiences, there were lessons there that I needed to learn that like the universe or whatever like gave me so that I could learn them and go through them. Like I wouldn't have made the movie had I not had such a heartbreaking experience to like unpack and uncover, and I wouldn't know what I was capable of in that field. There are other people that like really hurt me, but I also still respect because at the end of the day, if you can take away what you are learning from that experience and like know that like not put it on the other person like they did something bad to you, but just like remember like you were also there and you were making decisions to be there. So what is that about? And like, can you take something away from that? And like Jordan and I both say like having now met each other, all of our other relationships make total sense. So like we had to go through those to get ourselves here. And like see this for what it really is, because now it makes total sense. Yep. To your point about what was the second thing that you said?
Bringing the romance.
Oh, romantic gestures. Yeah, like not to go into the whole story, but down and out about love or romance. I just wasn't really like trying. I was on dating apps. I wasn't trying to like find someone to be with. But the way that I met Jordan was he DM'd me a poem because like I had put out something on my Instagram about like a competition to like promote the movie or whatever, and he took this like pretty, I mean it was like small at that point, but it still was a romantic gesture to like write a poem to me. And then over the course of like several months, like we ended up meeting each other and actually getting along, but like he kept doing very romantic things that allowed me to like really see him for who he was, and then allowed me to respond with who I really was. And if you're not putting your authentic self out and you're not like actually taking risks and being courageous, how is anyone going to know who you really are? And like, how are they going to fall in love with you? And I think also like he was responding to me having put myself out there so much with the movie in retrospect. And it wasn't really what I was doing, but I guess in a way I always kind of knew that if I could make this movie and like show absolutely everything of myself in the process, there had to be someone out there who would see that and be like, that's the woman I want to be with.
For sure.
And like,
wait, so for your current boyfriend, that's how you met? Was through
yeah.
Was
He
through
won
Instagram?
my haiku competition.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
but
amazing.
I didn't know what he looked like. I wasn't like, he doesn't have any pictures of himself on his Instagram, so it wasn't like I scoped him out. It was like, that guy, maybe he'll, it was like his poems were the best. And I said, okay, like, it was basically like a promotion thing for the movie. And then the prize of winning that competition was me sending this person a journal, like a branded in reality journal. I didn't get around to sending it to him before I moved to LA, and he was like, oh, I see that you're moving to LA. Like, I also live here. Do you want to meet up for coffee?
Wow.
I was like, oh yeah, that like saves me shipping. So he like literally showed up at my doorstep. I was like,
You're Jordan?
Oh my God.
Hey.
I am immediately in love with you.
That's amazing.
But then of course it's like, don't do that, Anne. Don't you dare romanticize this. Maybe he's just here for the journal. But he was so like kind and curious and like immediately interested and interesting, and we had a great rapport. But again, I was like, this has happened before. Like, I have connected with other people before. I'm not gonna let this be one of those things where I could go down the rabbit hole. Like, it'd be cool if he ended up being someone that I could be with, but like, I'm not gonna make shit up. He's gonna have to really like show me if he wants to be with me. And then he did. He literally like kept writing me poetry until I told him that I loved him.
So there you go. That's another takeaway. If you're in an unrequited love situation, step number 1, make a film. Step number 2, have the Instagram contest, haiku contest. Step 3, read through all your DMs. And step 4, meet up with people.
I do think you did raise another good point because besides that's how you clearly get over this situation, problem solved. But I think the point about like learning from your past, but also not becoming bitter from it is really important. Because like, I agree, like,
let it go.
Yeah, like I am grateful I did have this experience, even though it did not end the positive way that you think, because you learned so much. And again, like, I also don't feel bitter to this person because they were actually upcoming with me and it was my decision not to listen to that, right? But I think like if you err to on the other side that you're not going to take a chance with anyone, then you also aren't going to get to where you need to be. So it's like being cautiously optimistic, but also like in reality again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that idea of scarcity versus abundance. If you think that this is the only person out there for you, you're always going to obsess over them. But know that if you are able to fall in love with this person, you're able to fall in love with the next person even harder. So why not get to that next person?
Yes, for sure.
Do we have time for a question of the day? This is actually a pretty easy question of the day because we've been talking about it all hour. The question comes from Shelly. She says, I've fallen in love with 4 men in my lifetime. I'm 24 years old, but the problem is none of them have fallen back in love with me in return. I initially thought it was just bad luck, but I'm starting to think the common denominator is me. What do you think? Is there something wrong with me?
Dear Shelly, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to learn to love people that love you back and like not fall for people that don't and who make you feel bad. And by like removing that element of your life, it will be a lot easier to fall in love with someone that you're actually meant to be with. And also just like listen to the rest of this episode.
I mean, Shelly, you're 24, right? So like, I think it's like, that's what I think was really good about your movie too, is it like, it kind of brought you back to being like, oh my God, I was like kind of naive and like, I just didn't know, like, you just don't know as much, right? So I think Shelly,
know what you don't know. Yeah.
And like, you're young, you got time.
Someone asked me a similar question or like a related question at a Q&A once. They were like, if you could go back and tell your younger self, like, or young women, like what to do, what would it be? And I was like, you're going to make mistakes. Like, just have fun with your life. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up when you go in the wrong direction. Cause like, that's fucking life. That is what it's all about. Like, you have to make mistakes in order to learn what you're really after and who you really are. So you don't know what you don't know until you learn.
Totally. And I think also just like what we were talking about earlier is like taking these experiences, looking at them like actually realistic, like not just blaming the other person, but taking accountability. Like, I think it's a line of like not putting yourself down, but also being accountable that like some of it is your actions and like how can you change that in the future so the same thing doesn't keep happening.
So this is a quote that I recently heard and I loved it. This woman said, the brain is not a truth validator, it's an evidence seeker. So when we get fixated on a certain problem or topic, our brain automatically goes to the evidence that supports that theory versus actually looking at the truth. Because our brain is already an edited film by itself. So when someone says, I fall in love with 4 men who haven't fallen in love with me, how many men did you fall in love who did fall in love with you? Maybe that was 10. Maybe that was 5, you know?
Or how many men did you like not give the time of day who were nice to you?
Because your brain chose to forget about these men.
Yeah,
so
or
once you
chose to be attracted to these other guys for whatever reason.
For whatever reason. So if you find that there is a problem in the patterns that you're seeing, then you shift your brain to seek evidence elsewhere. Can I support the fact that I am a lovable person? There we go. Can I find evidence that I have a great group of friends. I have love in my life. And then you start seeing the opposite of what you've been trying to see for the, the past.
I think also like, I mean, again, 24, you got a lot of time. I don't want to say that like, this is like, those are the years that you really learn. But I think like in like, let's say she does want a relationship now and that's why it's kind of coming to light. I've been here before as I'm like, oh, like, why am I still single at this age? It's like, well, actually, when I was like 24, I wasn't like doing that at all. Like I was like partying and like not in that mindset whatsoever. So I think like Shelley can just like kind of meet yourself where you are at that time and just like, that's where you were and that's cool. And like now you're in a different place. So it's not like I'm this person because of my past.
And Shelley, go see In Reality. I'm going to plug the film once more. It's screened at so many film festivals. Where are you screening next?
We are screening in Los Angeles at Rom-Com Film Festival. It's also available on iTunes and Amazon Direct. So if you just go to inrealityfilm.com, you can find the link.
I just like was blown away by this movie. Like I'm gonna fangirl on you right now, but I think it's like, I just love the way it was shot because like we kind of alluded to it earlier. It's like kind of in the mind of someone going through this, but you were just so creative. And I don't want to like say a lot to give it away because you kind of just need to see it to understand it. But I just like thought the actual cinematography was amazing, but also just like as this whole conversation has shown, super relatable topic. Like so many people have gone through this unrequited love, or just like, even if it wasn't unrequited love, just in your early 20s, just kind of trying to figure out life and love, right?
So everybody go see the film. I think it'll resonate with anybody. Even if you never had unrequited love, you'll totally get what this film's about.
If you haven't had it, probably you've experienced a friend that has.
Yes.
Yeah.
You remember that time vividly.
Yeah. Or it's coming. It's coming for you. All right. Thank you so much, Ann, for being on our show and for sharing your experience with us and sharing your beautiful piece of art that came out of heartbreak.
Yeah, I love that. I think for any listeners, it'd be really interesting if someone had an unrequited love story that actually turned around.
Right.
I would love to hear that. Or
give all of us false hope. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
Because we didn't learn anything from this episode. But you know what? Like, this is all about hearing other people's stories. So maybe someone does have one of those stories. Or another way you turned heartbreak into art.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good one. Perfect. Thank you so much again. We're going to wrap this up.
Thank you for coming to see the movie and for fangirling on it. Like, I really appreciate you guys.
I'm going to come watch it at my house this weekend.
We're going to have a screening party.
Cool. When's the next screening party?
Yeah, tomorrow. The next screening is at the International DATEABLE Film Festival this Saturday. Okay, thanks again, Ann, for being on our show, and for anybody who has something to say about this topic or any topic, we love to have you as a guest on our
Thank
show.
you.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up.
Stay dateable.
Want to continue the conversation? First, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the handle @DateablePodcast. Tag us in any post with the hashtag StayDateable, and trust us, we look at all those posts. Then head over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes as well as articles, videos, and our coaching service with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We're also downloadable for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Stitcher Radio, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.